And we have Greg Olsen, who we love. Fox Sports. 3 Pro Bowls, 14 years. It's interesting. I'm going to throw this at you because I've been on this thing now ad nauseum for years. It's probably irritating. But I do think as the league has pivoted to offense, it's a different language. It's just Reed, McVay, LaFleur. I don't think Jordan Love improves that much in a defensive culture. And so I'm not anti-defensive coach, but you were in this league forever. You had defensive coaches. And my takeaway is, as the culture has changed, there are some innate advantages to the offensive side. So if I see a Raheem Morris or a Mike Macdonald, I'm a little concerned, but is that hyperbolic or overstated?
Yeah, it's funny. In my 14 years, I only played for defensive coaches. I played for Lovie Smith, Ron Rivera, and Pete Carroll. So I've only played on teams that were run from the defensive side and the defensive point of view. And listen, there's a lot of really good examples. I mean, of guys who've had a lot of success, and Mike Tomlin, and you can go around Macdonald now just getting hired by Seattle. I mean, there's a lot of examples. I think the reason why teams gravitate towards offensive coaches is because typically to get an offensive play caller in your building, you have to make him the head coach. And the greatest connection between the quarterback is with his play caller. And if you have success is going to get your staff poached. Look what's happened to Sean McVay, right? Every coach on his staff over the years has been poached. But what has always stayed the same? The play caller has stayed the same. If Sean McVay was a defensive coach and they've had the same exact success, every time these guys are plucked off his staff, his quarterback, Goff, and now Stafford, would have had to work with a new play caller. And it's just teams don't want turnover for their quarterback. And if you anticipate success, your play caller, if it's not your head coach, he's going to get plucked away from you. And teams don't want that revolving door. There's always a lot more defensive coordinators available. I mean, how would you like to be Philly? You fire Sean Desai, and all of a sudden Vic Fangio falls in your lap. I mean, that's a pretty good that's a pretty good defensive coordinator. So it's not so much that defensive coaches aren't great coaches. They are. I mean, Bill Belichick. I mean, you can go down the list. They're just harder to find guys to change their offense, to change the game on offense. So if you can get them in the building, you got to make them a head coach.
So you're one of the best tight ends I've ever seen, and I go back to Kellen Winslow, Gronk, Travis Kelce are probably the 3 best I've seen. There's been other good ones, Tony Gonzalez, Shannon Sharp. But I want you to, because some of it's Mahomes, some of it's Andy Reid. But when you watch, because you really break this stuff down so well, his feet, his hands, he made some catches the other day, and this guy's 10 surgeries in. This was backyard stuff. And, it's funny. It's almost the more we doubted him all year, I'm like, he's got a podcast. He's got Taylor Swift. He's getting old. Every time I see him, he's limping. And I'm like, yeah, it doesn't matter. He's really good. But what do you see from the position as an expert? What does he do that I don't see maybe, or that is elevated beyond what I can grasp?
Yeah, I mean, the physical stuff is clear, right? He's tall, he can run, he's got unbelievable quickness. For a guy of his size to have the footwork to get in and out of breaks and stop and start, that's unique, right? So you couldn't have the success and the production that he has if you didn't have the physical qualities and the physical tools. So we'll set that aside. What makes him such a nightmare is when San Francisco this week has their scout team tight end running Travis Kelce, and he's wearing an 87 jersey, and he is Travis Kelce, he's going to run the routes that are on the card, right? The coach is going to hold up the scout team card, and he's going to run 10 yards and run a dig, or he's going to run 10 yards and run a corner. It's going to look like real routes. Travis Kelce is improvising his routes the vast majority of the time.
Wow.
And I say that as a compliment. Him and Mahomes have a unique understanding that Kelce knows, okay, this is the timing of the drop. This is where I'm supposed to get to. How I get there is not as important as be where the quarterback expects me to be at the end of the route. And for a defense to not really know what that is going to feel like, it's hard to prepare for. All week, the guy caught the ball 2 yards inside the numbers, and that's where I think he's going to be. But that's not where Kelce's going to be. He's going to run to open space. And Mahomes and him have the best connection. It's approaching the best connection of all time. You could say Brady and Gronk right now hold that mantle. But it's hard to prepare for guys when the routes are not what we always expect them to be. And find space. If you're open, stay open. And he's got a quarterback that can throw the ball from any platform at any moment, and the ball's put on him. The combination of those two guys, they're unpredictable, and you just can't prepare for them in the conventional way that you prepare for most guys who are running things like it looks on a piece of paper.
So here's my concern with San Francisco going into the Super Bowl. I've watched Mahomes minus 27 degrees at Buffalo, at Baltimore, have 12 great quarters. And some of his greatness is in the game against Baltimore, just not making a mistake. Kind of game managing, which I think is the next level of greatness for a quarterback is, I don't have to be great. Josh Allen sometimes is so great, he grates his way into some, failures. But I've watched Brock Purdy in 4 first-half quarters, Green Bay and Detroit. This is with the schemes of Shanahan, turbulent, choppy. And I'm like, the AFC is better than the NFC. Mahomes has had 12 really good quarters, and Brock's had 5 8 quarters when I thought Goff and Jordan Love outplayed him. I would think, if you'd have told me before I saw it, how Brock Purdy will have really good halves, I would have said first half, right? Like Shanahan's schemes. Now, Detroit, some of it, he couldn't get the ball because they dominated. But should I be concerned? What does it tell me when he was outplayed in the first half by Jordan Love? He was outplayed badly by Jared Goff. Why is that? I would think Shanahan's schemes, that would be the half he would excel.
Yeah, I think the biggest compliment that we can give Purdy is, as long as Kyle Shanahan's been the head coach of the 49ers, they have been a dominant team. Their track record of NFC championships, Super Bowl appearances, all that's been well chronicled. They have never been a good team playing from behind. That's just never been their style. They're a play from the lead. They're an under center, play action, half boots. You're not made to come back from 10 points in that style. Brock Purdy has brought them the ability to play more out of the traditional shotgun, to play more from behind, more an up-tempo 2-minute. And we've seen in the 2 biggest games of the year, something we haven't seen from this San Francisco team in 7 years, 2 weeks in a row, against the wall against Green Bay, and then down 17 at half. It looks like the end of the world's coming at the half last week against Detroit. To have the ability to play from behind is an element that this Kyle Shanahan offense has just never had. And now, when they do find their early rhythm with the run game with McCaffrey and Debo and the play action stuff to Ayuk and Kittle, that's when they're at their best, right? The under center play pass. And that's the core element of this scheme of why it's so good. Now, all of a sudden you factor in, hey, I got a quarterback that can also play from the gun. Hey, I got a quarterback that can also play off scramble and pick up plays with his legs, or throw off scramble and pick up big plays. I mean, it's just not what we've seen the quarterback position for Shanahan be able to do in the past. And that's not a knock on Jimmy G or any of these guys. Purdy deserves a lot of that credit and the trust that Shanahan has to put him in the gun and say, okay, we're going to throw the ball 25 times this half because we got to come from behind. That's new. And I think he deserves a lot of credit. And obviously Mahomes is unique, right? Mahomes has played that shotgun style, the game's on my shoulders, for the last 3-4 years. And that's nothing new to all of us. We've seen Mahomes do this now time and time again. The difference in Kansas City is this is a defensive-led unit, right? Mahomes is an all-timer. Kelce is an all-timer. Andy Reid. Those guys on offense deserve all the credit in the world. Steve Spagnuolo and this defense, that is the story of the Kansas City Chiefs. They might not get all the headlines and they might not be the center of attention, but the reason they're in the Super Bowl is that defense.
Finally, there's an old saying, generals have to separate from the troops, right? You have to have some separation from the infantry and the general, because you're going to have to make tough decisions. It's why my bosses don't go out and have a cocktail with me. I get it, right? Got to be a little separation. And I think my knock on Dan Campbell, I defended him. I said, listen, he's true to who he is. They leaned on their strength, their O-line. He's completely authentic. He at times is reckless. I will defend him on all that because Baltimore didn't even bring the same game plan to the table. I don't know what the heck that was. Oh, I know what that was for Detroit. I've been watching them for 18 weeks. That's who they are. But I do think there's one thing where he has to, in the lack of a better term, grow up. Sometimes he coaches like a player. And I want to go, you're a coach. Like the Dallas situation. I'm like, come on, Dan. You're not a player. Or is that fair? Are we getting into a new era where the coach is more the player. Younger coaches, closer in age generationally to players. How do you view Campbell's sort of player-like emotional state on play calling?
Yeah, so I'll take it as two separate pieces. So first, his personality and wearing his emotions on his sleeve and the love, he's not afraid to be vulnerable. He's not afraid to put himself out there, whether it's in a post-game press conference or midweek or in his locker room speeches to his players. He is very consistent in that regard, and he's very unapologetic. And for that, I think that's a big reason why when you speak to Goff and Taylor Decker and Penei Sewell and the veteran, the leaders of this group, they can't say enough about this guy. And it's not your typical – what's a player going to bash his coach? Like, it's not your typical player, just coach speak and, oh, he's a great guy. Like, it is genuine. The love they have in that locker room for Dan Campbell is genuine. So I'll say, I think it's a big reason for their success. I don't think it's a coincidence. I think the connection they have between him and their identity and that locker room is a big reason they flipped it in 3 years. As far as his play calling and as far as his, what people, they want to call him reckless. They want to call him, I think it's important to point out, reckless is when you make the decision in the moment just off emotion. That is not what Dan Campbell is doing. Those decisions were made last week. Those decisions were made 3 years ago. In 4th and 3, we are going to go for it every single time. And I think it's important to differentiate between, yes, he's an emotional guy, and yes, on the sideline, it appears that it's all being caught in the moment. It's the exact opposite, right? The people that want him to take the points, people that don't like the 4th down fake punts and all that, those are emotional reactions to outcomes you don't like. Dan's actually the one removing emotion, removing gut feel, and saying, no, we are 14 of 17 on the year in 4th and 3. That is better than my kicker from 48. The notion that I'm turning down the points is just not true. It's just not mathematically accurate. And I think the response to that is actually more emotional than the way Dan is approaching it.
By the way, I thought about this. So Harbaugh, his hype video's out, and I love the guy. But I do forget that he's been out of the NFL for 9 years. And he is quirky. The league has changed, but I think his physicality sort of transcends college pro. That's my take. If I said to you, 11 wins, second to the Chiefs, is from where they were. I mean, do you see anything being an issue with Jim? Because 9 years, Greg, there's a lot of rule changes, culture changes. You think he's going to be a hit or no?
Yeah, I think it's hard to anticipate him not being good. I mean, the guy has won literally at every level and literally wherever he has coached, college, small school, Stanford, Michigan, the 49ers. I mean, we went head-to-head with that 49ers group, call it 2010 to 13 or whatever that span was. They were incredible. So, it's hard to bet against them. I mean, when you have a track record of success at all levels of college and the NFL, there's a reason that he is who he is. And he might be quirky. He might have his own way of doing things, but when he steps in front of that locker room, these players are well aware of what he's accomplished. They are well aware of the expectation and the winning standard that he creates everywhere he goes. And the guys that are able to match that standard are going to find themselves on the way out. And the guys that rise to that standard and embrace it are going to be the guys that help turn that thing around, because there's no doubt that Chargers team has a lot of pieces, obviously starting with the quarterback, that they should be a contender in that division at the bare minimum. So I'm with you. I don't, if you told me they're going to win 11 games and compete there at Mahomes and whatnot, I'd say that sounds right. It's when you have the track record of success that he has and the ability to replicate it in all scenarios, not just a very unique situation. All right, he only wins when he has a great quarterback or only wins when he has a great defense. He's won in a bunch of different ways at a bunch of different levels, and I think that speaks volumes.
Greg Olsen, Fox Sports. Good seeing you. Great work as always, buddy. Love what you do.
Appreciate it.
Hi, everybody. It's me, Uncle Colin. Subscribe here to get the latest from the herd, including exclusive behind-the-scenes videos and more, wherever you may be, however you may be watching. Thanks again for making us part of your day.